Hi there, this is Jeff Sklar, and I'm pleased to welcome you to my podcast, The Practice of You. I'm a lawyer in Los Angeles, and I'm fascinated by lawyers who have brought joy and balance to their lives in a career that doesn't always make that easy. In each episode, I'll have a one-on-one conversation with a lawyer who excels professionally, but more importantly is committed to promoting their well-being. Whether athletic, creative, or mindful, there are dozens of ways that lawyers have achieved balance, and we're going to explore that together. You can find this show on all of our major platforms, including YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and on our website, sklarkirsch.com. And with that, let's start practicing. Hi there, this is Jeff Sklar, and this is The Practice of You, and I'm here with Nikki and Doug Mark. Hi, guys.
Hi.
Hey, Jeff.
Hi. Thanks for being here. Nikki and Doug are here today to talk about Tommy's Field and the TM23 Foundation. Doug and I go back several years, and Doug is an attorney here in Los Angeles and is a prominent music attorney. Nikki has been a business executive and an author for many years, and maybe we'll hand it over first to Nikki and then Doug. Tell us a little bit about your professional lives.
Well, I had a 22-year career in startups. I helped create operations and oversee operations for 3 different startups in Los Angeles. And then one morning, our son Tommy didn't wake up and everything changed. And that's when I began writing and writing and writing and started to treat myself and my own life like a startup company, and just started to see and trust where it would lead me.
Mm-hmm. And Doug, maybe talk for just a second about your practice.
I've been a music lawyer for close to 40 years. I've had my own firm for the last 16 years. We have offices in Los Angeles and New York. It's exclusively centered on music and sometimes other places where our music clients take us to Broadway and the books. And that's been a consistent and productive run.
Great.
And I continue to do it and mentor young lawyers and really enjoy the practice of music law.
And we've done a lot of work together over the years, which has been great, and that's how we got to know each other. Nikki, you mentioned Tommy. And of course, we're here to talk about Tommy's Field, and maybe you could tell us the story of, first of all, what Tommy's Field is and how it came to be.
So Tommy was an athlete. His favorite sport was soccer. Mm-hmm. Ever since he found a ball as a toddler, it was always at his feet. And he wanted to play professionally. That was his dream. Yeah. In fact, when he was 8 or 9 years old, he told me, "Get ready, I'm moving to Europe by the time I'm 15. And so I believed him. And, we became a soccer family. And he grew up with an older brother who had already played soccer at the highest levels that he could. And so Tommy grew up watching him play, and then he became the player that he wanted to be. And so a few days before Tommy didn't wake up, I told him that I was thinking about upgrading a field in our local public park here in Los Angeles for kids to play on. It was empty dirt holes for over 20 years, and I just wanted to do something meaningful and give back to the community in this way. And he said, "That's so cool, Mom. I can't wait to play on it. Our neighborhood doesn't have anything like this." And 3 days later, when he didn't wake up that morning, you don't really know what to do. It's so horrible. And a friend came to me that day and said, "Let's build that field. Tommy would love to know that his spirit of play is continuing to impact other children in ways that he loved." And we regrouped with Doug and our community in our home that day, and Tommy's Field was born, the idea of it. And we then set out to raise the money that would be necessary to gift to the city of Los Angeles to build this field and to call it Tommy's Field.
So you started working on the project of Tommy's Field, if I heard you right, in very close in time to when he didn't wake
Yeah.
up.
I had been working on it. I had already had some designs with the city. I didn't know how I was going to fund it. I
Yeah.
just knew that it would be meaningful to the community. The park was empty and needed this space. I told Tommy about it. He loved it. And all of a sudden, everyone in our community needed something to pour their grief into. And it became Tommy's Field, like a way that we could transmute our grief into something meaningful and serving to the community that also honored Tommy and everything he loved, and his spirit of play that was so deeply missed already.
Maybe you talked about Tommy a little bit, but I read your book, which I'm sure you'll talk about in a little bit, and maybe give some color about Tommy's personality, and because I got the feeling he was really quite vibrant.
Yeah, Tommy was an extrovert for sure. Yeah. He was always smiling, always laughing, always connecting with people. In fact, in preschool, the preschool director called him the mayor. And because he would walk in and wave at everybody and say hello to everybody and joke, he didn't care what your job was, what your background was, what you look like. He connected with all kinds of people, all ages, all backgrounds, all cultures. In fact, the more the better for him. And I was a very private person, actually. I kept my circles really small. And so sometimes I would look at him and wonder how he was my child. And so he was a child who loved to play, and he played really hard in his life. He went for everything that he wanted to try, whether it was singing or dancing or playing multiple sports. He really lived as if he knew he might only be here for a short time. And it's taught me a lot about how to live life on my terms now, moving forward. Yeah.
Well, I guess maybe we can talk a little bit about the process that you went through, because you were already starting to work on the field, and then you have this new mission in life to get this done. How did you even know how to approach it, or who to call, or what to do?
So I was already working with the Department of Recreation and Parks in Los Angeles. I had a 22-year career in startup businesses, so I knew how to create something out of nothing. And I had been the president of a West Side soccer club for 4 years, where Tommy and my younger son played, and I had become very well-versed in athletic fields and grass, things I never knew would be important to me at this stage in my life. And one of the startups I actually worked on here in Los Angeles was for one of our professional soccer teams, and I helped them build a practice facility with fields. So I had experience in this realm, and I had already been in touch with the city of Los Angeles, the Department of Recreation and Parks, about this possible field. I just didn't know how to fund it. And so the day Tommy left, when this idea was sort of resurrected, and it was actually Doug who came up with the name Tommy's Field, I literally reached out that day. I sent an email to my contact there in the department. I think it took me way too long to write because it was literally one sentence, and I didn't even understand the words that I was typing, which was that Tommy passed away and our community wants to build this field. To honor him, would the city consider us gifting the $1.2 million that I already knew it would cost in exchange for calling it Tommy's Field? And the city, to its credit, called me back very quickly and said there is precedence for this, and we already liked the idea of refurbishing this field in this park. So carry on, raise the money and let us know when you do.
How long did it take to raise the funds?
It took about 9 months.
That's pretty fast.
It was a lot faster. The community that we didn't really even know we had came out in so many ways that we never could have anticipated and raised the money. It was like beautifully tragic all at once and so meaningful, I think, to everyone involved.
I guess a question I have for both of you is, it takes a lot of strength to have that sort of experience and be able to transcend and convert it into what you converted it into, this amazing gift to thousands of kids for the future, right? Creating the field. Well, how did you find the strength to do that?
Well, for me, people always say it's strength, but I always like to tell them it's actually love. Like when you love someone that much, you will do anything to persevere and prevail. And this was Tommy's legacy, and this was something I told him I wanted to do that he loved, and it just represented everything that was most important to him about life, playing. And it taught me so quickly when he left how important it is to play, and how we as adults, and especially women, often forget the value of play, especially as we get older. And there he was reminding me every day, play. And so it was love that really helped me get up every day and push forward one step at a time until we could get it done.
And Doug, meanwhile, you have your law practice. It's a thriving law practice. How did you manage with the practice and Tommy's field and all of the time going into that? How did you balance all of that?
Well, strangely, they sort of merged for a period of time, because in our fundraising efforts, the music industry, which is a tough business, as people frequently talk about, with tough characters, was remarkably supportive. And I could not believe the emotional and financial support that was shown to me. And I stayed away from the office for about 3 months, and my team kept it together. But we began our fundraise, and the music industry showed up for us in a major way. And, concerts and comedy shows and battles of the bands that raised money. And then people in those days would go out to lunch, would take me out to lunch within 6 months of Tommy's passing, and they'd unfortunately have to sit through me crying, because while Nikki was writing and doing her spiritual healing process as her new venture, I was just practicing music law. Right. But during the day, everybody around me had to, whether they wanted to or not, share my grief. And they were great. And so it did merge well, that I could focus. He passed in April. Probably by about September, I was able to focus on the practice. In the meantime, spending a lot of time as sort of a philanthropist fundraiser to build an athletic field in his name. And they all meshed pretty well, and they kept me going.
One theme that I hear from both of you is community. And, that's really special, because it sounds like, of course, you have your close friends, but it sounds like you were both pleasant. I don't want to call it surprise, but you received this outpouring of community from directions maybe you didn't even expect. Maybe you talk a little bit, each of you, about how that feels, because that's, I think, sometimes in a big city like Los Angeles is that might not be the thing that people think would or could happen.
We were blown away. The first thing we did was open our doors that morning, and everybody came. Everybody who knew Tommy, and that was a lot. Everybody who knew us, people from my business, the community of Los Angeles, and the community of the music business, and the community of the soccer world, all showed up for us. I'm still blown away, as I'm sure Nikki is too, by the support we got by opening our arms and saying, we're helpless, please prop us up. So we were already lifelong Angelinos, and now we're stuck. Everybody talks about moving to Florida and all that stuff. Not us.
Yeah, that morning, my nature was to go private because that's how I was, but Doug's was to open up. And I, quite honestly, I kind of cracked open that morning. Whether it was my higher voice or another guy telling me, this is not just about you, to let people help me, that they needed to help me. And we were in this together. And so I learned that day that by allowing people to help us, we were serving them too. And we were providing each other what we all needed. And quite honestly, it was a huge lesson for me that simply allowing people to help you will keep them coming. They'll keep coming and they'll keep helping you, as opposed to going private and going in and then waking up one day and being like, wait, where is everybody? Well, I told them I didn't need them, or I pushed them away. And we didn't do that. We said, we're helpless. We need everything and anything you want to give us. Everything and everyone is welcome.
You harnessed the energy, right, of all of those communities to achieve this amazing result. I think you were telling me, Doug, a story, maybe it was last night, about when you were out on Tommy's Field. There were two of Tommy's Fields, by the way. We talk about that for a little bit, but one in Westwood and one is at Vista Del Mar School.
Correct.
And I think, were you at the Vista or the Westwood when somebody came up and said, are you the Marks, to shake your hand?
We were just there. Actually, People magazine sent a photographer to take pictures of us on Tommy's Field, which has been a major boon, more than anybody could have expected to the community. There are no fences. It's open to the public. There's kind of no such thing. And so it's a little bit of a unicorn that it exists. So yeah, sure enough, a dad was throwing a football around with his son, and he walks over. I didn't know him. The son was younger than our kids. And he walks over to me and he's like, are you responsible for this field? And I said, yeah, kind of. And he said, thank you very much, and shook my hand. And then the kids playing soccer that the photographer wanted the shot, they said, those are the Marks. So it's not about us. It was a necessary place for kids to play. Tommy knew it when he was 5 years old. Nikki didn't mention that when she told Tommy about a place to play. I was there with him at 5 when he was trying to move his soccer along after leaving a local park, and he joined a clinic there, and they couldn't use the field. And he said, this is crazy. At 5, 6 years old, there's this giant rec center near my house, and you can't play on the field because it's all dirt and mud. So he knew there had to be a field there, and when there was, it was really better than anybody could have imagined in terms of the use for everything: ultimate frisbee, soccer, football, little kids, every culture, soccer training. It's been wonderful.
So how did you end up creating the second Tommy's Field? What and is this a continuing thing? How,
it's
what
a
is
brand.
What is it turning into?
I knew in the middle of the first one that there were going to be more. I just knew, and I could see them. And the first one became difficult. We had challenges that we didn't expect with neighbors living next to the park that preferred the park empty than filled with holes in it, and but filled with children playing instead of a field with holes in it. Yeah. And so it became really difficult, and it escalated into a pretty big community, local political battle. And Vista Del Mar, a school who's been here for has existed for over 115 years now, serving so many children across our city of all kinds and circumstances and abilities, called us, and they said, we want Tommy's Field, and we won't give you any problems.
Wow. Steve Lopez of the LA Times wrote an article about the shocking opposition to this field. And so they read about it, as did the city of Santa Monica, as did many people. And Vista Del Mar called Nikki, I believe, and said, we want Tommy's Field here. Don't deal with those people.
Wow.
And so we met with Vista Del Mar, and we saw their campus and the similar dead field in the middle of their campus that was desperately in need of some love. And, that's the thing about Los Angeles is we have such a robust youth sports community, especially soccer, which is the number one youth team sport in the city. But we really suffer from a lack of public playing fields for children and adults. And so the gift of Tommy's Field was not only honoring Tommy and his spirit of play, but it was really and has been really serving a need that this city has. And so when Vista Del Mar called and we saw their dead field in the middle of their campus, it was like, here we go again.
Yeah.
Let's do this. Tommy would love to be playing with these kids.
They had a different constituency. That is a place where the city of Los Angeles places kids who won't operate well in a school of differently abled kids. These are kids with some have autism, they have various cognitive disabilities and financial challenges. So we visited that institution. We took a tour, and Tommy spoke to us, and we said, there's going to now be a second. They said, we want the Tommy's Field. We said, no, we're going to get it done in Westwood. There's no way we won't. But now that we're here and we've seen this, now we know we have to raise the money and do a second one.
And the beautiful thing about the second one is that it does serve Vista's community during the day, but after school and on weekends it serves community groups outside of the school. So now we're uniting children of all kinds through play.
So one of the things I remember reading in the book was that Tommy seemed to me like a bit of an ambassador, because he would go play. For people that don't know Los Angeles, we know Los Angeles. Los Angeles has the West Side, which is, one bubble in and of itself. And then there's all the rest of Los Angeles. And Tommy would go to another part of Los Angeles to go play soccer. I don't know if it was that he thought that the kids were really strong players there, or maybe you can describe what the reason is. But it's just so interesting to me that he was bridging gaps and building bridges, I would say, in how he was even living his soccer life, making friends in parts of town that maybe kids would never ever meet those kids. And meanwhile, a field gets built that does the exact same thing.
Yeah, he was born this way, and now his legacy is doing the same thing, connecting people through what he loved to do most, which was play. And so he was about 8 years old, I think, when he asked us to let him try out for a soccer team in downtown LA. And he said, the Hispanic kids take it more seriously. I'm ready. And they're going to teach me and make me tougher and make me better. And so Doug took him down, and quite honestly, he never came back. He came back to sleep, and he came back to go to school, and he had his life here on the West Side that he loved. And then every day after school, he either took the train, the metro downtown, and then we carried him on to East LA, and we just kept going further and further and further so that he could play and take his dreams as far as he could go.
And make a lot of friends.
And we made a lot of friends and have a really large community outside of West Los Angeles now because of his efforts and ability to connect so deeply with people.
Wow.
There are a lot of Tommy tattoos on 19-year-olds, young women from Bel Air and Brentwood, and young men from La Puente and Corona who all have Tommy tattoos now.
That's unbelievable.
He was an ambassador.
Wow. You mentioned challenges. Obviously, there was the big challenge, but when Tommy didn't wake up. But then the challenges of getting these fields stood up, and the community objections. And was there one moment in the process that to you was a really hard moment, or a moment where you didn't know if you were going to get this done?
There were many moments. There were 11 community meetings that
11.
every time I walked out of one, I thought, okay, where do we go from here? Our loss was so big that to me, all these little problems were fixable. Everyone was arguing over things that meant nothing to me. I couldn't even really feel the arguments because my loss was so much bigger.
Right.
We just wanted to serve our community and honor our son. It was that simple, but they didn't trust us, and they didn't want change, or they definitely didn't want change that they didn't think of themselves. And so I had this moment where we looked at each other and we thought, what would Tommy do? Would we take this field somewhere else? Would he say, forget these people, let's go elsewhere? Or would he fight? Because he could go, he was a fighter too. He could go either way. And, the game of soccer really started guiding me through that decision process. And Doug and I would often come to similar conclusions at the same time in different ways. And it really came down to we have to try and get to our mayor, because we're trying to give the city that we love over $1 million. And I wrote this in a letter to him, I know you're really busy, but if you can't accept this gift, what can you do?
Right.
And that was the beginning of having some rational conversations where I felt like we were no longer in this crazy political arena full of old school community leaders, a council member who was just trying to do what he thought was right, but then people were upset, and then neighbors who we didn't understand, and they didn't understand us. Meanwhile, we have thousands of donors that are like, when's the field? And
Right.
Soccer players and football players. And so it was kind of a
a lot of stakeholders in
circus,
this venture.
yeah. And so once we got to the mayor, and once we realized half the people we were talking to weren't even decision makers, weren't even going to vote. Just seeing how the bureaucracy of Los Angeles works as a person who does operations and startup companies that are fast and nimble and clean and, everything connects. It was like finding their way through this nebulous cloud. And, but we did it.
Yeah.
And we learned a lot. And ultimately, Tommy's Field is better in the end because so many different voices were heard.
Wow.
I wouldn't wish it upon anyone, but the result is beautiful.
So let's talk about TM23 Foundation and how does that fit in? What is its mission? And to the current fields and to the future, and because I know TM23 also has some activities that are coming up that you may want to talk about.
We formed a foundation to take in the money, a 501c3, take in the money to build the first field. Nikki has spearheaded, starting certainly with the second field. Nikki spearheaded all the fundraising efforts, and she's also created a tournament. She also wrote a book called Tommy's Field, and the proceeds of which are going to the foundation. So I'm going to let her take it from here and talk about the tournament and talk about the foundation's ongoing efforts.
Tommy came up with his own brand, TM23. It's not a game, it's a lifestyle. He created that for himself. The TM standing for his initials, and 23 was his jersey number. And it was a class project that he had to do it for. And I overheard him practicing it. And then once he passed away, we received his artwork from school. And that was the brand logo that he created. So all of a sudden, that was the name of our foundation, the TM23 Foundation. It's not a game, it's a lifestyle. The mission, obviously, to brighten our world with the spirit of play. And, the mission goes on to say, to teach kids to believe in themselves and to serve their communities. But at the end of the day, we just want to bring more play to the world, to honor Tommy, and to remind all of us how important it is to play in our lives. And so, we started this 501c3. We raised over $2.5 million in the last 6 years for the two fields.
Wow.
And we're in discussions with the city for a third field in the downtown area. heading east the way Tommy did in his life. And every year, well, this is our second year doing it since the first field at Westwood Rec Center was built. We host a tournament on Mother's Day, and it last year fell on Tommy's birthday, but it's just a great special day for so many people and a difficult day for so many people. And so it's an appropriate day to host a youth soccer tournament on Tommy's field, fully sponsored. Both of our men's MLS teams in town help sponsor it. The women's team is helping as well this year, Angel City.
Wow.
And we have local sports shops and families sponsor teams so that all kids across the city have access to play. And all the money raised goes towards a fund that will be ready to refurbish Tommy's Field in perpetuity when that time comes. And, it's expected every 10 years you have to refurbish the field and keep it in great shape for everyone. So, yeah, the vision is continue to share the spirit of play. And when the opportunities arise and we think it makes sense and our community is up for it, which our donors increasingly are, we build another one. And then we activate it and make sure that, there's good access for all.
And let's talk a little bit about the book. Does the book arise out of the same motivations that the creation of the field is, or is the book something different for you? How do you compare when the goals that you were trying to achieve personally, or what you were your mission for each of those projects?
Yeah, I would say the field was honoring Tommy's legacy.
Yeah.
It was learning how to play myself, quite honestly, and just honoring that infectious spirit that he's left with all of us. The book was survival. The book was just, I turned to writing because I didn't know what else to do. And grief is profound, and there are no words for it, this kind of grief. And I started writing. Someone left me a journal as a gift, and I just started writing to Tommy, and I started trying to process what was happening. And as the drama of Tommy's Field began to unfold, I simultaneously had a fairly large spiritual awakening. I was not religious. I was not spiritual. I had nothing to fall back on other than my business skills. And yet in that moment of loss, I found and heard and started seeing things I couldn't understand. And I got curious. And so as I found myself in the drama of Tommy's Field, I also was trying to make sense of this spiritual awakening. Fortunately, two things that would pull me out of my grief day after day after day. So Tommy's Field, the book, actually became a place where I embarked on my healing journey and began to explore how to heal a mother's broken heart. Is it possible? And how was I going to possibly do that? Because I had to. I have another son, and I have a husband, and I have my own life. And as Doug said to me early on, dying and just kind of giving up on life doesn't help anyone, and certainly not Tommy. Mm-hmm. So that gave me the mindset of, okay, if I can't just crawl into a corner with my pain and wither away, I have to rise up somehow. And writing this book became like a new opening of interests. It started to bring forth new talents I didn't even know I had. I started making connections between the field and my healing, and the more I started healing, the more progress I made on the field. And I really started to get to know myself again, because quite honestly, after a child passes away, at least this is how I felt, I didn't even know who I was anymore.
Mm-hmm.
You die that day.
Gutted.
So you start over. And when you start over, you do anything that makes you feel just a little bit lighter, just a little bit better. And writing was one of those things. And I started writing 7-8 hours a day. Pretty soon I was writing a book. I can't really explain it.
Wow.
But I actually believe, he was writing it with me, just like I feel like he's building these fields with me. and us and our community. I think he's very present, energetically, spiritually, and has his hand in a lot of this.
And the book just came out in January, is
Yeah.
that right?
Yeah.
That's great. Doug, how did you feel when you first read the manuscript? Or you probably saw it as it was coming together, I imagine, but...
Not much. I was doing my job, and she was doing her job. Her job was to write, and mine was to practice law.
Yeah.
But she gave me an early draft, but not that early. It was a finished book, and I was blown away. I closed the book, and I said, honey, that's an absolute page-turner. And I had lived it, so it did not leave me sad. It wasn't maudlin. It had a very difficult beginning because she begins with his passing and then goes back from there and builds the story of her healing and the creation of the field. And it was a page turner. It was funny. She dressed up these thinly disguised characters with funny names and showing all their characteristics. She had a dialogue going of how Tommy was helping her win her way through this political battle using soccer strategies. It was extremely well written, and I use the same phrase over and over. It's an absolute page turner. If you're reading it now, so you know what I mean.
Yeah,
it's a very
really
enjoyable
special
read.
book.
So I was
Yeah.
extremely impressed as soon as I finished it.
And were you guys, it's one thing to write something, like for yourself, you write something, and it's another thing to let it fly out into the world and for all of people to read. When did the writing change from writing for you to become something that you were going to let fly?
Once I started to see that my healing journey was working, that I was beginning to heal my heart, that I might be onto something in terms of a new way to live, then I thought, like the kind of entrepreneur I was in my former life, if I can learn to heal my heart from a loss like this, maybe this could help people heal their hearts from any kind of loss. And I wanted to find out. I wanted to keep exploring and continue on my journey. And as my healing journey went deeper and progressed, and the field started to progress, and they both came together at the same time, I just knew I had a story that had to be shared. And it really wasn't all that conscious. I turned to Doug very early on in the process. I said, I don't understand it, but I know this is important, and I have to write this book and share this story. And he looked at me like, okay, what? Where's my businesswoman? And I really could not explain it. I was frozen with grief. This was not conscious. It felt very, it just felt very spiritually led. And I just went with it because what else was I going to do? And
Certainly turned into something important and beautiful.
Thank you.
I really did. You mentioned something that I think is a good topic to touch on, which is people when they have to deal with something like this, significant event in their life, loss, and you've been through this, and you've managed to find a journey in connection with it. What advice would you give to, I guess, generally somebody who, needs to figure out how to put one foot in front of the next and stand up? And I guess I address that to you, Nikki, and then Doug, maybe you can answer the same question and relative specifically to, the life we lead as lawyers and the weight we're already carrying on our back for our clients while we're trying to deal with our own personal responsibilities.
For me, the answers were kind of in the pain, in the grief. And so I always tell people I share my story. I can't tell them what to do because we all react so differently and we all have such different circumstances and maybe even a unique plan for ourselves. But really, it's love. And your deepest moment of grief is the deepest feeling of love. And similar to what we spoke about before, I tell people, it's not strength, just use your love to put one foot in front of the other and honor the person you love. Maybe it's one smile because they smiled all the time. Maybe it's laughter. Maybe it's doing something they loved. Trust that by honoring them, one simple way at a time, every day, that you will progress and you will, in the process, even honor yourself in a way you didn't know you might want to or could be possible. So, in those moments of loss, it's so hard to know what to do, but the answers are always simple. And when they're based in love and motivated by love, you really can't go wrong.
For lawyers, all lawyers exercise, men and women, and they assume that that's their natural outlet, and it's really important, the endorphins and the fitness. And I know there's a fairly strong sobriety movement among lawyers who take up for stress release or other purposes. They overindulge in drugs and alcohol, and that's a very good community, the sobriety community. I'm a member of it. But the general ability to talk emotionally with peers and colleagues, clients, is something that I find enriching and valuable and stress reducing, and a lot of people aren't interested in it. And it adds multiple facets to the character. A lot of my clients see it on my social media because I share so much about myself and my journey, not just about Tommy, but just fun stuff and goofy stuff that I do. And that humanity outside of our practice has been very fulfilling for me and stress relieving for me. So the practice of you, which is the name of this podcast, is find things that enrich you. I think whether you're a chess player or somebody who has things they need to talk about in life, maybe take history classes. There's some lawyers I know who are experts on the Civil War. A guy in Nashville, a guy in New York. They're real history buffs. And I find it such another facet of their lives that they are fulfilled by and puts a smile on their face. And I think all of us who tend to be workaholics and tend to just exist in the service of our clients on the given deal or case need to do our best. It's however much time it is out of your day. It's going to actually make you more efficient as a lawyer, right? Using that hour to do something else than less efficient. Lawyers forget to think about that.
It might even make you happy.
It might even make you happy. Yeah. And it's slightly counterintuitive, but it's a very valuable use of their time.
You both talk about what I would call personal vulnerability, opening yourself up. And I've touched on this in earlier episodes of this podcast. It's the lawyers generally don't want to show any sort of weakness whatsoever because, all of the reasons you would imagine. I won't have clients. They'll think I'm weak. They'll this and that. But the great irony in that is through your personal vulnerability of sharing your experiences and, whether all of the whole spectrum of them, you guys found strength and support because you opened up and you were greeted by a community. So it really continues to dispel what I think is such a bad notion that lawyers need, and really anybody, but we happen to be talking about lawyers. The lawyers need to put up a front We're human.
And some of the most successful lawyers I know don't share anything beyond the what we refer to as analogously speaking, the four corners of the document.
Right.
The four corners of their life as a lawyer, and that's all they need to give you, and that's all they need to give a client, and they forge ahead. And maybe they have a rich, fulfilled life outside of that. Maybe they don't, but they take the approach that that's nobody's business. My job is to move the ball forward. And again, some people are a lot more successful than I, have a lot more success doing it that way than bleeding into your real life. Like, I can't help myself but do it.
It just depends on who you are.
Yeah, I think so.
Is there anything else that you'd want to touch on before we wrap up? Do you think we've left out things that you'd want to say about either the fields or future projects or the book?
I would just say that another reason I wanted to share the story of Tommy's Field as I experienced it was because I wanted people to know how to help someone else going through loss and change. And what I learned is that whether people are going through loss, they're all going through some kind of change and transformation. I went through a radical transformation in terms of my interests and my job and what I would do next. But what it has taught me is that there's so many things we're designed to do. And that if you're nudged to try something, you should do what Tommy Mark did and just try it. Because you have nothing to lose. You have no idea what tomorrow may bring. You might, not to scare anybody, but it's possible to not wake up tomorrow. We don't know what it will bring. So every day is an opportunity to listen to the nudges that you have and just try it. What's the worst that's going to happen? That you didn't like it or you failed? Like, it's so minor compared to the possibilities.
Well, I think that's a great note to leave it on. Nikki, Doug, thank you for joining us today on the show. And this was a really special session. Appreciate you coming in.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks. If you'd like more information about the TM23 Foundation, check them out at their website at tm23foundation.org. Thanks for joining us today on The Practice of You, hosted by me, Jeff Sklar. You can find this show on all the major platforms, including YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and on our website, sklarkirsch.com. I really appreciate your positive reviews, comments, and sharing this show with others. Until next time, enjoy the present moment and don't forget to practice you. This podcast is considered attorney advertising by the California State Bar. The discussions in this podcast do not constitute professional advice of any kind, including without limitation, medical, legal, or business. And you are advised to consult with your own physicians, lawyers, and other advisors before undertaking any activities discussed in this podcast.